Okay, so today we're gonna show you how to fix a screen on a MacBook Pro Retina 13-inch. It's a late 2013 model, 1502, A1502. We're gonna replace just the screen itself, not the whole assembly. So, as you can see here, the screen is cracked on the side. The assembly is bent a little bit. Hopefully that's not going to affect it much. But if you end up having a corner bent or destroyed or damaged, you won't be able to do this. In case you do it, you'll put the screen in and you'll crack it right away as soon as you squeeze that down to be taped back. Okay, this freezes. Okay, so in order to do the whole thing, you gotta take the whole assembly off. I'm gonna start by opening the bottom. By now you probably figured that this is not Louis Rossmann. He refused to do this. Oh yeah. At least that's what he says. Okay, so we're gonna remove the whole assembly so that we can start taking the screen out. To remove the assembly, you gotta take off the screws holding the hinges and two screws holding the two little brackets that hold the hinges down. So there are 3 screws on each side holding each hinge. Yeah, they can see it. So the two little brackets, you'll see there is a little black screw holding it. I'll pick it up like this and show you. It's right there. You gotta unscrew these, otherwise you won't be able to take the assembly off. Try to remember which one is left, which one is right, because you'll need to put them back in the way how they were before. Okay, so now we're gonna unplug the cables. What I always suggest to everybody trying to learn this or knowing how to do this, always unplug the battery before you unplug any of the cables, so you don't kill something or short something out. There's the LVDS cable, the cable that actually releases the picture on the screen. Here's the camera. It's glued to the fan, so you can just peel that off. And antenna, Wi-Fi antenna cables, that's pretty much it. So the assembly comes off, and then now we can start taking stuff off so that we can take the assembly out. So the screen, taking out the screen is going to be the last thing we're going to do. First we're going to take off the hinge bracket and some screws holding down the inverter board, or however it's called. There is a small board on the bottom. To take this off, slide it a little hard, slide it towards right, and just pick it up from one side. You'll be able to take off the whole thing. Okay, so there's a bunch of screws holding everything together. You can start by taking out some of the screws that you can see. There are small black Phillips screws holding the Wi-Fi antenna down. Wi-Fi antenna is right on top of the board for the screen. Screws are kind of going through. We're gonna take out the cable, the LVDS cable. It's covered with a small black tape, which you gotta kind of rip off. because it goes around this whole thing. There is another screw under it. Try to keep these screws together so you don't lose them, because you'll need all of them to close this up properly. Okay, so now we're gonna take off the hinge that actually has the LVDS cable running through it. When you're doing this, try to keep this on something that is soft and clean so you don't scratch up the whole assembly, or maybe keep the assembly in a plastic case. Okay, it's a Wi-Fi antenna. Wi-Fi antenna you don't need to take off, because there is a camera cable running all the way up to here. You can't even pull it out, so don't bother with it, but just put it on the side so it doesn't kind of on the side so it doesn't get damaged. The LVDS cable is pretty much the same like on any other model. Just unhook the latch and pick it up. There is a small screw here holding down the screen board, and one on the right side. Okay, now you gotta leave this. This is glued in the middle with a piece of tape. Don't worry about ripping the board off, anyway you're gonna replace it. Usually comes off easy. Oh, I forgot to tell you one thing. The backlight cable is right here, right next to the here you can see. It's right next to the LVDS connector. It's this little connector. You gotta unplug that. That's something we're not gonna be replacing, and be careful not to rip that. If you rip that, then you're probably gonna end up replacing the whole screen assembly. Okay, so this one took a little bit. Okay, the next thing to do is to take off these screws that are in the middle. These screws are holding down the bracket that's glued to the screen itself. It's like if any of you did the MacBook Air, it has the same thing. It's just when you assemble it, it's gonna go a little differently in. But don't throw the screen with this out, because you will need this later. Okay, next thing we need to do is we need to remove the rubber gasket. Rubber gasket is just slightly glued with the tape. We need to pick it up with something and remove it. It's easy to remove it, you just have to pull it off and it will just come straight off around the screen. Okay, there is a trick with this rubber gasket. When you take a look at it, in the middle there is a small gap, and in this gap the new screen is going to go in. So don't lose this, and you'll see later how it goes, but it's a little tricky to put this back in. There are two more screws holding down the case. Not the case, the bracket to the case. And another two screws which are hidden right under the cable for the screen. These little flex cables that connect the board to the screen, you have two screws covered with the tape. That's not good. Okay, that flew right off. I'm gonna have to find it. There we go. Okay, so now we need to heat up the screen to actually get it off from the case. The thing is, If you try to use something that gets really hot, the screen is just gonna pop. It's gonna explode by itself. You'll have some small pieces break off. And if you use, let's say, a rework station, it's gonna, if a lot of heat is concentrated on one spot, on one small spot, the screen will pop and you'll have big issues taking this off. In this case, I'm gonna use a heat gun with the low heat, just a regular heat gun. This is 1100 watts, so it's not that hot, doesn't get that hot. Spread out the heat evenly on the side. I always go from the right side first because it's easier for me to pull it off like that. The trick here is to lift the screen in one piece so that the sides of the screen don't get broken in the process. Now when you start taking it off, it's gonna be a little hard because you can't bend it a lot. This screen is much more fragile than the screen on a MacBook Air. Okay, so the whole screen is glued on the sides. There is a black border that you don't see on when the computer is turned on, and under that black border there is a lot of tape holding this down. So what I'm gonna try to use is, I'm not sure how this is called, but it's pretty thin and it can help in lifting the screen up. What you gotta do, you gotta go under this bracket that we said do not throw out after you're done. The screen, my screen here is cracked on this side, so this is gonna crack right away as soon as I go in there, but try not to crack the screen because the more it cracks, the harder it gets to actually take it out. And try to keep the knife or plier or whatever you're using to the right. Don't go to the left. If you go to the left, you might scratch the inner sheets, which we're also not going to be replacing, and those are very important because if you fuck them up, there's going to be all kind of scratches, lines, blemishes on the back of the screen, and if you're replacing this for somebody, I can bet they're not going to like it. Fucking microphone. Wait, you got my hand. Don't apply too much force here, because the screen is gonna crack very easily. The more it cracks, the more pieces that it leaves on the side of the case, the harder it gets to actually remove it. Okay, the trick is to just lift it a little by little. Let me try to zoom so you can see what I'm doing. Can you tilt it down? Is it good? Just to show like the side of it. Good?
You see a big LED strip.
It won't focus. Okay, yeah, so, well, it is what it is. I just put it, you got it? Okay. Let me see what I'm, let's see. Okay, cool. You can see I never go too much after one reheating or whatever, however you would call it, because it's gonna crack you need to add a little bit more heat after, I would say, 5 to 10 seconds, because the screen cools down really fast and this adhesive just connects back to the case. The trick here is to, like I said, not crack it, but get to the end of it. When you get to the end of it, you're gonna slide the long prior again on the side and try to get as close to the camera as possible. Don't try to dig or lift or anything like that. Just slide it in and let it go the way how it's supposed to go. There is also a gap in the metal case below the screen which has that cable in there, so you shouldn't have to worry about ripping the camera cable, but be gentle with it. Yeah, it's good. Well, you can unzoom it, I guess.
The autofocus doesn't work because of the light, so I just gotta focus it manually.
Okay. Okay, since I don't have a prior that's too long, I'm gonna have to do it a little bit more with the regular one, which is less flexible but much stronger. We're gonna go from this side up to the point where the camera is, and that's where we're gonna stop. I don't like to go over the camera. I usually start doing it from the other side. I'll see if I can see under the screen the camera board. If I can and it doesn't crack, I'll just continue on the same side, but if it does, I'll have to dig it from the other side. There's a little bit more adhesive here because it's wider, so it's harder to pick it up. And you definitely don't want to rip off any of the... here we go. Okay, that always happens around the camera. So we're gonna start from the other side now. From the other side, we're pretty much gonna do the same thing like we did on this side, and try to connect it from the other side of the camera. That's where we're gonna leave the screen and take it out. Okay, this thing got really hot, so I can't even hold it anymore. Okay, the screen cracked here, so we're also gonna have some pieces on this side. Okay, this looks good. So we gotta do the same thing on the upper side and get it connected all the way to the camera, and it should come clean off, as clean as it can. What I do, I usually keep cutting in with this until I cut all the tape that is at least as far as I can reach, so that it's easier to lift the screen. Okay, this is the part where we're gonna take the screen out, because this is where I cracked it from the other side. Okay. I think there is another screw here. Or maybe not. This is just... no, this is just tape. Gonna have to separate the tape on the bottom, because this tape is holding the screen down. Okay, here we go, it goes up. Okay, now it's time to lift the screen. The pieces where we actually, the parts where we lifted the screen a little bit before, will settle the tape again all over, so you'll need to add a little bit more heat so you can lift it this time. Don't worry about the cracking sound, that's the part where I cracked the top of the screen. Okay, that's how you take it out. Don't throw it out, we need to take this off, and that's very important because we're gonna have to use it later. Okay, unlike MacBook Air, you don't need to put the tape to hold these sheets inside, but what you need to do is be careful with them so you don't touch them and you don't scratch them or leave any marks on them. Okay, so now what we need to do, we need to clean up the sides, because it has some of the tape left. This needs to be as clean as you can. It's not that easy to clean this tape off, especially when you're dealing with something that is so fragile, but you gotta clean it as much as you can. So use a metal, I use a metal prier like this and just scrape it off. That's where the tape is going to go, so we need it to be as flat as possible because the screen is very fragile and very easy to damage. If you squeeze it back on there, it might just break. Okay, we need to remove the tape from the inner side also. That's the harder thing to do, so just keep sliding it out, be careful with it. You can keep the prior over the edge of this gray border. That's the part that you will not see under when you put the screen back in there. So that part is something you can actually use as a border to how far in you can go with the prior to scratch this tape off. Believe it or not, actually taking the screen out is the easiest part of this repair. Okay, the top we're gonna leave for later. The top didn't get damaged, so I might use that tape. Part of it I'll need to scrape off. Fucking piece of shit. Okay, I have a piece of glass here. I need to remove that as well. That's always gonna be hard. If you're doing this and you end up with pieces of glass on the side, you gotta clean them up, and you gotta clean them up really good. Even the smallest shard can break the new screen. And this can get sometimes messy, so try to do it towards the outside of the case so that you don't spray any of the glass on these little white sheets inside. At this point, don't heat anything up. If you heat it up, you're gonna melt these sheets. At that point, go and buy yourself a new assembly. When you see these pieces of glass fall on the screen, don't touch them. Don't try right away to take them off with your fingers. Leave them where they are. They're not doing anything to the sheets yet, so we're gonna remove them later with some compressed air. Okay, we need to remove the top tape. This is where the glass was. Be careful around the camera. Be careful. Okay, so you need some compressed air to clean this off. Don't put too much pressure. If you have a compressor, if you have a can there, don't move it left or right so you don't spray out the white stuff from it. Just gently blow off everything that is in there. It's not gonna damage the screen, so don't worry about that. I mean the sheets. If you try to do it with your fingers, you will damage it definitely. Okay, that's pretty much it. Now we're gonna put some tape in here and we're gonna leave the assembly for now because the case, at least because that's the case is prepared, almost done for the new screen. I don't put the tape all around. There is no need for that. You will see what's holding the screen back in there, so you don't need to put the tape all over the place. You can if you want to, but either way it's not gonna come out. And this allows you to possibly take the screen out if you catch too much dust at the end under it, or maybe something else. Maybe if you need to clean something off that you didn't see originally. So don't put too much tape, just put some tape that is gonna hold the screen in the most important places, and that's close to the corners and on the top. Don't cover the rubber gasket gap with the tape, because if you do that, the gasket might not fit in properly, and while trying to squeeze it in, you might crack the screen. So do not cover this little hole that you see on all three sides. The bottom is not really important. Okay, the assembly is done. Now we need to prepare the new screen to put it in. I set that on the side. You know, these don't come with the front protector. None of them come.
Fucking bullshit.
Yeah, dude. Okay, this is the new screen. The only thing you have on the new screen, at least the ones that I have here, this little bottom cover that when you peel this off, the little tape that will hold the bottom of the trim is there, and on the other side you have the protector that protects the back of the screen. This protector you need to remove before you actually put this in. This is very fragile, very easy to break. The front doesn't have anything, so the front we need to clean after that. I clean it with toilet paper because I found it's the best to actually clean this thing. Okay, so now we gotta put the screen inside the little rubber trim. Rubber trim doesn't have any tape or any glue or any adhesive, anything, so we gotta figure what to do with that. We gotta figure it out. We gotta put some tape in there so that you can actually put the trim on there so that it doesn't come off. So what I do, I just put the tape on a couple of spots around the screen, on the screen itself, but on the other side of the screen, not this. Now let me get a couple of sheets of paper to put under the screen. Because I don't trust what I have here already. Okay, the amount of tape I'm gonna put there is on the edges and very little. This tape is supposed to hold the rubber, so a little piece here. Try not to put the tape in the areas where you actually put already the tape in the screen case, because that it's gonna go one on top of the other, and you don't want that. It's gonna double. It's gonna be thicker. The one in the middle I'm gonna put longer, but you gotta put it on the complete edge of the screen so that the little rubber trim actually grabs it when you put it back on. If the tape you put on there is not enough or not positioned properly, the rubber is gonna move. Don't put the screen back in. If the rubber moves, you'll need to do the tape all over again. So just keep that in mind. See where you put the tape on the other one so that you don't cover it again. I'm reminding because if it's gonna get thicker, if you put the screen back in and tape on top of the tape, you squeeze it, it'll break. Okay, so take off the other side of the tape, and we're gonna put it back on there. When you put the trim back, try to make it evenly the way how it was before. The corners have to perfectly fit in the corner. Otherwise the trim is not going to go in the case properly, and it might be uneven. And I can tell you one thing, if you close this up and everything is not perfect the way how it was before, you're gonna have to open it up to adjust it and put it back in there. If you want to open it up, that means you're gonna break the screen most likely, and you're gonna need a new one. Since these screens are very expensive, I suggest you make sure everything is prepared properly. If you're not sure that you've done something the way it's supposed to be done, rewind this video and do it all over again. Okay, so putting this rubber trim is not easy. That's how I do it. You don't have to do it like this. You can do it however you want. That's how I find it easy for me to do. So like I said, make sure the corner is perfectly in the corner. This is the most annoying fucking thing in this repair, because you need to put this on and this needs to be perfectly there, and it cannot move while you're putting this in. If it does, you need to adjust the rubber all over again. It's not that hard to do if you grab it properly, but don't squeeze anything, don't twist anything. Okay, now you're gonna remove this tape from the bottom of the screen. I mean the cover for the tape, and that's where we're gonna put the front bottom of the trim. On the back of the bottom piece of the trim, there is a gap which is supposed to fit perfectly the screen inside, so it's adjusted well. So try to follow that. On the bottom of the screen there is a black line which it's a tape that covers the bottom of the screen. Try to follow that tape so that the rubber trim is in a proper place, because if it's not, it might not fit properly inside the case. It also needs to be straight and even. Like I said, everything needs to be pretty much perfect so that you can put it back in there. You'll have some slack to actually adjust it, but not a lot. When everything goes in there and when it gets glued and tightened up, if you want to open this up, that's going to be a nightmare. Okay, so that's pretty much it. You prepare the screen. Now it's time to put this back in there, and that's where the fun begins. It's very hard to position it properly and straight and perfectly in a way that it's going to be evenly in there all the way. And the worst of it all is you have to make sure that there's no dust under the screen, because if you leave any dust, that's going to be visible. If you got this far and you didn't touch any of the inner sheets, that means you did a good job. You're not going to have any scratches, blemishes, or huge marks that are visible, but it's very easy to get dust under because you need to close this up. And if you're not in a room that has like 1,000 air filters filtering the dust, it's almost impossible to do. Okay, so make sure to take off the protective side of the second side of the tape. Clean this off a little bit. There's gotta be some dust in there. Don't use too much air, you don't want to blow out the screws. Okay, we gotta take this off. Gotta peel this off. Don't touch the back of the screen, and try to not get any dust on the back of the screen, and good luck with it. Okay. what I do, I put in the upper corners first. You remember how I said you don't need to take out the right hinge? Yeah, take out the right hinge. Okay, some more here. Don't worry if you dirty the sides of the screen, if you leave the fingerprints or stuff, that's not really important. You can't see those. That's behind the black border. So position the screen on top of it. Try to use the camera lens as orientation where the screen needs to go, because that's how you'll know where exactly to put the screen. When you put the screen in there, slide your finger over the rubber trim all around. Make sure the rubber trim got inside the little gap. I can tell you one thing, when you're done with this, you better pray that you didn't break the screen, and then wait for a surprise when you assemble it and you turn it on. If you got this far, good job, you replaced the screen on the Retina. And you probably wish you'll never do it again. Okay, so there is a little tape on the bottom, holds the screen down. You can put that back. Fuck.
Okay. Metal bar.
Okay, you fucked up, so now you need to take the screen out. This is when it gets fun. If you want to know what I fucked up, we didn't put this on the bottom. This needs to be on the bottom, so this whole thing needs to go out. Now you're gonna see how to take out the screen without breaking it, because most of you are gonna forget to do something that I said to do. And yeah, good luck with this. Okay, so we're gonna do the same thing again. I'm gonna take out the rubber trim slowly and gently. And guess what? We're gonna have to do it again. Putting the trim back on there is going to be fun. Okay, now we need to take this out without actually cracking the screen. I never squeeze the screen down, so that means I didn't tape it in there. Even though I put the tape didn't connect because the screen needs to go a little deeper, just a tad deeper inside. So we're pretty safe to remove it. Just place it somewhere on the side. Here is what you need to do. You need to heat up the bottom of the old screen, so you remove this metal piece. Where is my... This is a little hard to remove, but you're gonna have to clean it up. New screen doesn't come with this. And it is what it is. Okay. So I need to clean the whole thing. The tape needs to come off from here, which pretty much means more scraping. So I'm pretty sure Lewis is not gonna edit the video, and he's gonna leave the fuck up in there so that you know if you fuck up how to do it. This is not a big deal, but the biggest fuck up would be to break the screen. If you break the screen, there's no coming back from that. Do we have some alcohol? I'll need to just wipe it off a little bit. This is not that hard to clean off. Pretty much you can even do it. You can do it with whatever you have. Even a razor blade or something. It's good enough to clean this off. You don't have anything to worry about or be careful with here. But let me explain to you what happens if you don't put this thing in. The bottom of the screen has that backlight strip. The backlight in this screen is not one piece with the actual screen that shows the picture. So the LED strip is on the bottom of it and behind those sheets. And there is a small piece of plexiglass. It's kind of a sheet type of plexiglass that actually shines when the backlight strip is lit up from the bottom and lights up the whole screen from the back. The actual screen doesn't have any light in it, so you need that. If you forget to put this little thing in, you will not have this white piece here, and this white piece actually closes off the backlight, and the backlight is going to shine out all over the place. So you're going to have weaker lighting of the screen, and you're going to have something that looks like, I don't know, some mirroring lights on the bottom. So the first thing you should do, actually, so you don't forget about this like I did, because the repair is pretty long, and at this point you forget to do something that you should have done right away. As soon as you take off the old screen, take this thing off, clean it up, and prepare it to put it back in the assembly, because at that point you won't forget it. Okay, so at the end, what I do, I just take some alcohol, clean this up. Okay, we gotta put some tape on this. And this tape is going to also hold the screen on the bottom. Don't put this on the screen. Never put this on the screen. Always put this back inside the case first. If you put this on the screen, glue it up to the screen, and then you want to put it in there. Here's what's going to happen. The screen is not going to be positioned properly, and you remember when I said everything needs to be exactly in line, otherwise the screen will not go in there straight and it will crack when you try to press it down. That's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to crack when you try to put the screen in, and if this thing is not in there the way it's supposed to be. So this thing always goes in first before the screen. And don't forget, we had 2 screws that were covered with tape. They're gonna go here. Okay, now we need to do the rubber again. Tape is still there, so it's fine. Again, I'm reminding you, remember, this needs to be perfectly aligned. Corners need to be in the corners where they were before, not on the side or anywhere else. Now here's the trick. We don't have the protective sheet in the back anymore. I removed it before I put it back in there. So I'm gonna have to align this from the back, and then I'm gonna adjust it when I put the screen back in there, which you still can do. It's just a little harder to do it that way. Don't blow too much air. Even a little bit more pressure can break the screen. Okay, like I said, from the top, again, the corners have to go in. Use the camera as a guider so that you fit the whole thing in. Push it just a little bit from the bottom. Remember when I said congratulations, you replaced the screen? There was a fuck up. Now we replace the screen. Okay. Make sure this little rubber goes in here properly. This top rubber we're gonna adjust so it goes straight the way how it's supposed to. Okay, that should do it. Okay, now we need to put back the 2 things. We need to screw this down. Remember, this was held by 2 small screws. And we need to put the antenna back on there. Okay, before we do the antenna, we're gonna put the LVDS cable back there. Don't forget to plug in the little backlight cable, that's very important, that's gonna light up the screen. Let's screw in the left hinge. That's your screen cable. Now, since this is a repair that you actually pretty much do completely before you even test it, there's not much you can do about it. When you close everything up, you'll be able to nicely plug the screen in and test it, make sure that it works. So let's hope you didn't have a defective screen to begin with. If you did, you're gonna have to get another one. Let's put the right hinge back in there. Okay, so there is a little hook on this antenna. It's a little plastic piece that holds this camera cable up. Don't forget to pick that up so that it sits there properly. Otherwise, you won't be able to press down the antenna nicely. The cable is gonna slide under it, and you're gonna have a problem there. Okay, the bracket needs to, the clutch cover needs to go back on there. Okay, so here's where this rubber is important. The rubber actually connects directly to the clutch cover. So that's what makes it seal the whole thing. And if the rubber is not positioned properly, you might go under the clutch cover, you're gonna push it down, and it's gonna pressurize the screen, it's gonna crack the screen. So that's where you gotta be careful. Gotta put this on. And this is not fun to do because, you know, if you squeeze too much, you might crack the screen. Louis usually at this point leaves because he thinks he's gonna jinx it and I'm gonna break the screen. Right? No, everything's there. Okay, let's see what we did. I'm not gonna put this together, I'm gonna test the screen first. It's white, it has no dust, it has no scratches, it has no marks, and whoever you're replacing it for should be happy. Okay, so I'm gonna wait for this to turn on, shut the computer down and assemble it, and then we're gonna test it one more time. There is one thing that I noticed when I replace the screen on these. Sometimes it will turn on and the screen backlight will go out completely. The only thing you gotta do is that happens when it boots up into the OS, and that happened to me once or twice. when you assemble the whole, when you turn on the computer, you boot it up, just put the backlight all the way up and it's gonna work fine. Don't worry, it's nothing that you did or something that doesn't work. Let's put the screen back on there. So this screen, like I said, has a dent on the side in the corner. This one wasn't that bad, so it turned out good. But if the dent is pretty bad, it's significant and goes inside the part where the screen is sitting, you will not be able to replace this without pulling the dent out or even replacing the whole assembly, if that's not possible in the first place, because you're gonna crack the screen as soon as you put it back in there. So if it has bent corners, see first before you start doing this if the screen can even fit. So this whole thing is supposed to be a little shorter without that mess with forgetting the bottom bracket. So to avoid that, like I said, do the bracket first as soon as you take the old screen out and you should be good. Make sure that the assembly is even, that it's not sticking out on any of the sides before you tighten these screws on the bottom. Okay, this is dirt, we're gonna clean that off. If you were careful and nothing was under the screen assembly while we were doing this, you won't have any scratches on anything. Okay, so this is the part where you can gently slide down the screen on the sides so it connects with the tape that you put in there. Don't squeeze too much so you don't want to break the screen again. And like I said, the toilet paper cleans this very well, better than pretty much almost anything I've seen. But if you have something better, clean it with that. I cleaned it with on dry, just by wiping left and right, and everything went out. All the fingerprints, dust, or anything else that was on the screen while I was replacing it. And that's it, you're done.